acoustic guitar playing that sounds weak and open, kind of like in a poor man's picture. In a candid revelation, famous Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page steps into the limelight and casts shadows over fellow icons, the web. This makes the rock and roll world go crazy. Page shows how troubled the relationship between the two rock giants was, digging up a past full of rivalry, personal demons, and internal strife. The late 1916s and early 1917s were a great time for rock, with bands like Led Zeppelin and The Who dominating the scene. Supreme, each carving out their own place in the pantheon of music legends. On the surface, they seemed to be allies in the sound revolution, pushing boundaries and redefining what rock could be. But behind the scenes, there was a rivalry between them that few fans knew about, a clash of ambition and artistic vision that would leave scars on both sides. Recent news from PA sheds light on this competitive tension, indicating that mutual respect was often overwhelmed by envy and criticism of those who were seen as raw and rebellious. They thought they were the first band to play aggressive, catchy rock music, while Zeppelin, with PA's masterful arrangements and Robert Plant's wailing vocals, wanted to be the heaviest and most innovative band of their time. The tension between them wasn't just about music, it was about who would be in charge. The Who's guitarist Pete Townshend was known for having a sharp tongue, and his occasionally mean comments about Led Zeppelin made things worse. He saw Zeppelin as copycats, a band that built on the sonic building blocks that the other side had already put down. Jimmy Page, who was very careful when it came to music, thought that the Who's often crazy energy lacked the precision and technical mastery that Zeppelin was known for. Their rivalry went beyond words. At festivals and industry events, tensions would rise as both bands competed for the best time slots, the loudest performances, and the most electrifying sets. Fans were also drawn into the conflict, debating endlessly over which band really ruled. In rock's golden age, the war of words and the quiet fight for supremacy became a constant theme in the stories of both groups. They helped define a time when every note played was a sign of competition. A big part of this disagreement was Pete Townshend, the guitarist for the band The Who, who is known for being honest in his opinions. Townshend sometimes put down Led Zeppelin's musical style, suggesting that their heavy sound was a copy of The Who's innovations. Such claims suggested that Led Zeppelin's style was just an echo of The Who's groundbreaking work, definitely stoked the flames of conflict. Keith Richards, the guitarist for the Rolling Stones, also got involved and said some bad things about Led Zeppelin. This made the split between rock's biggest titans even bigger. In an interview in 1998, Richards said, "I never really took to Zeppelin," which was not a passing comment. Richards didn't like the band's big sound for a long time because he thought it was over the top and didn't have the raw sincerity of the blues-inspired music. He fought for rock and roll, and this added to the complicated web of rock battles, since Led Zeppelin, at the height of their fame, was often seen as overshadowing other bands of the time. Richards, who was always a traditionalist, didn't like Zeppelin's long, winding songs because he thought they lacked the tight, no-frills intensity that he thought made music true rock. He thought that this was what the song was supposed to be like, and it stayed that way throughout the whole running order. Behind the scenes, it didn't end there. Richards and Jimmy Page had a complicated relationship. Both admired blues legends like Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, but Page took blues to grand, otherworldly heights with Zeppelin, while Richards kept the sound raw and grounded. This philosophical difference led to subtle jabs and insults over the years, with Richards calling Page's skill level excessive and Page calling Richards' style rudimentary. Mirrored a deeper rivalry between the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin, two giants fighting for power but with very different ideas about what rock music should be like. The Stones thrived on swagger, rebellion, and a devil-may-care attitude. Zeppelin radiated mystery, power, and grandeur, and Sonic did the same. It was a fight not only of egos but also of artistic ideas, shown through the words and actions of two of rock's most famous icons. Despite foreign conflicts, they had to deal with their own internal problems, which pushed the band to the edge of destroying itself. Many times fame's excesses, the constant push to stay relevant, and the demons that haunted its members made it so that chaos reigned just as hard offstage as it did on summer. Keith Moon was the best rock and roll singer ever. While Wildchild is talented and destructive, she can't be stopped. His drug use got out of hand, making him as unreliable as he was talented. One minute he was mesmerizing crowds with his powerful drumming, and the next he was breaking into hotel rooms. Moon often caused problems on stage, and he would disappear for days on reckless benders. This made his friends angry, and they often had to clean up after another Moon-related disaster. The times he crashed his car into a swimming pool or hit his own chauffeur while drunk weren't just stories for the tabloids, they were cries for help that went unanswered. By the late 1917s, his self-destructive tendencies had finally caught up with him, and he died of an overdose that left the band in shock. Bassett Moon was overtly chaotic, but John on a Whistle was more calm and fought his own fights. He lived a careless life and had whistle struggles that happened in the background. He spent a lot of money and accumulated debt that finally crushed him. His love of over-the-top mansions, a huge collection of instruments, and gambling destroyed his finances. When he died in 2002 of a heart attack caused by cocaine, it was a stark warning that even people who seemed calm on the outside could be depressed. Be sinking in front of you, man. Roger Daltrey and Pete Townshend were famous for having a very unstable relationship. Even though they admired each other's work, they often disagreed about creative direction, and their egos would erupt in ways that turned the studio into a battleground. Daltrey, who was the fighter of the group, was never afraid to get physical, and he once knocked Townshend out during a heated argument, which showed how unstable their relationship could be. As the band's lead author, Townshend had a lot of work to do. He battled depression and addiction, going through his own inner turmoil while writing anthems that defined a generation. These problems, along with the pressures of fame, made the band seem like they were always on the verge of breaking apart. For all their brilliance, The Who wasn't just a rock band, they were a storm that could break apart at any time. But they kept going, and their music shows both their genius and their pain. Nature went beyond their own relationships and led to many fights with other artists, business partners, and even the police. Their reputation for destruction and lack of respect for authority became as famous as their music, making people fear and admire them in equal measures. One of their most famous rivalries was with the Rolling Stones at a time when rock was a battlefield for control. Both bands found themselves vying for the same spotlight, with tension erupting over performance slots. The disagreements reached a peak during the famous Rock and Roll Circus show in 1968, where they allegedly outshone the Stones, causing Mick Jagger to hide the footage for a long time. The groups were angry at each other because they were competing so badly, and members would insult each other verbally for decades. Their actions weren't just famous on stage, whose hotel-destroying antics became legendary, but they also had real-life effects. Keith Moon is famous for having wild parties. The band once caused so much damage at a Michigan vacation resort by blowing up a toilet, throwing a car into a swimming pool, and setting off fireworks inside that the band was banned from all vacation resorts across the country. They were also blacklisted and got into legal trouble, with their management having to pay large fines and damages just to keep venues willing to host them despite their rock star behavior. The band also got into high-profile fights with other musicians. People who work for Pete Townshend never mince words and often took aim at bands he thought were bad or not original, which got him into public fights with the Kinks and even younger rock bands like the Sex Pistols. The second feud was especially heated. Townshend saw punk as a pale imitation of the Who's early rebellion, while Johnny Rotten and Sid Vicious saw Townshend as an old relic of an era they wanted to destroy. Their aggressive reputation also caused rifts in the industry, as executives afraid of their unpredictability didn't fully back their projects. There were arguments over contracts and album releases, and their management was often in court over unpaid debts, missed obligations, and lawsuits from former employees who said they had been mistreated or underpaid. Wherever the Who went, chaos followed. Their brand of rock wasn't just about sound, it was also about attitude, disruption, and defiance. But while it made them famous, it also left behind broken relationships, bitter enemies, and a reputation that often overshadowed their music. Brilliance in music. Even though the Who had a lot of problems with people inside and outside the band, their legacy as rock pioneers is still unblemished. If anything, their problems made their legend stronger. The fact that they were able to turn personal and professional problems into groundbreaking music shows how strong and talented they were. The Who were a band formed in conflict, but their music went beyond the chaos that threatened to break them apart at every turn. That's why they left an indelible mark on rock music history. Their anthems weren't just songs, they were war cries born from struggle, excess, and the never-ending search for something greater than themselves. The very problems that would have broken down lesser bands instead fueled the Who's sonic revolution, from Townshend's tortured genius to Dee's firebrand spirit to Moon's self-destruction to an implosion of silence. Each member brought a piece of the storm to the music they made, from every riff to every punch thrown to every broken bottle in anger. Their work was raw, real, and unforgettable, and their influence has been felt for generations. Many musicians see the triumph and tragedy of the Who as part of the price of true rock immortality, no matter how many fights, scandals, or self-inflicted wounds they face. Their sound is still untouchable, which shows how great they were in the past. You can think of the rock world as a big tapestry, with each thread reflecting a different legend's life. Because Pennsylvania is honest, these posts are pulled, showing the complex patterns of friendship and strife that have shaped a time. The story of the Who is one of fire and fury, of genius and madness, and of the endless clash between genius and self-destruction. Despite everything, this story still echoes through the halls of rock and roll history.